5 members of the board. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Isla Vista Community Services District. I'd like to announce the meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you do a roll call? Jonathan, I think you're on mute.
Oops. Director Brent?
Here.
Director Bertrand?
Here.
Director Freeman?
Here.
Director Hedges?
Here.
Director Nguyen? Director Thurlow?
Here.
And Bob is getting on. He has internet issues. I sent him the call-in number, so he'll be on soon.
All right. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Aniscoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we have the consent agenda. Anything that directors would like to pull or a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
Moved by Thurlow, seconded by Freeman. Any other board discussion? Any public comment?
I have a quick
All
comment
right.
to make. You will notice that 2.2, the legal fees, does not have the attachment as it did, this earlier this year. And I think I sent an email to everybody, but just reiterating it now is because that work product is attorney-client privileged. So we're only going to be putting the top line, what we owe, and then I'll get a slightly more broken down version, but not the detailed that you've seen this past year and a half.
So Jonathan, if we want to look at that, we can go into executive session.
You can email me too.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for that update, Jonathan. All right. We're going to go to a roll call vote.
Director Brent?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Hedges?
Yes.
Thurlow?
Yes.
Guys. Maybe this new call-in is guys.
All right. Motion passes. And with that, we'll move into the public comment period. So this is the time for any members of the public to speak on any item that is not on today's agenda. So the board will not take action on any item that's not on the agenda, except as provided for by law. But this is for non-agenda items. Any public comment? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close the public comment period. So we'll start off with item 4.1, which is the Racial Justice and Public Safety Work Group update.
Great, not a huge update on this particular item. We have 2 other ones in our agenda related to this, which are the safety stations contract and the review of the data, which 2 big ones. Just the couple things is the anonymous phone line for undocumented residents, moving that a little further out because just to prepare information to think about on how to operationalize that has just been slow. And then we have next week, or October 27th, as a discussion item, unarmed response to community issues and SBSO UCPD use of force policies. And then November, I think we'll get enough information to have a decent discussion for the phone line by then. And then it says UCPD foot patrol budget review. And so we could have that too. We don't have anything done for December, so any other ideas to add to the calendar, let me know now. Or otherwise, not just now. But if you have any, let me know.
Jonathan, can I add something?
Yeah, what is it?
The president of UC was in a meeting today in which he indicated that the University of California is doing an extensive, and I should say that he prefaced this meeting by describing his latest unnecessary stop by police in which he was treated very, very poorly, even though he was the chancellor of UC Irvine. My feeling is they're doing a top to bottom review. They will have one report out in November about what they've learned, and another report out in January in which they talk about best practices. But clearly the idea is to address the issue of how do we de-escalate force, and how do we make UC police more community friendly. So I just add that to that things are going on in the University of California at the highest level.
Okay, I'll put in, if there's a report that comes out, we can hear about that. Especially if there's someone at UCSB who can talk to us a little more about it, that'd be great too.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Dave Miller. George is absolutely correct on what he's saying, and that's all in the works.
So Dave, the question is, do you think we could get the new police chief to come out and kind of introduce himself to us, and also maybe talk a little bit about, I mean, he's at Berkeley, so he's familiar with what's going on system-wide. Maybe he can talk a little bit about what's happening.
He will definitely be able to talk about a little bit what's happening, and I'll let him speak to that. But as far as the University Use of Force Committee for research and calls for service and all that, I'm on those UC committees. So we're definitely working on those things, but I will definitely get with incoming Chief Yao and see if he can make the November date for a meeting.
The other thing the president said was the university police system-wide get about 300,000 calls a year, or about 1,000 calls a day for service. And he pointed out that what's not seen is many of those are coming out of the medical system, out of the hospitals, where there's a great demand for intervention. So anyway, I just add that as I think the university is taking very seriously the questions about, is there a better way to do community policing?
Yep, you're exactly right.
Thank you for that update, George. We'll definitely be excited to hear more as it becomes available. Okay, so then with that, if other board members, unless there's anything else to add to our schedule and our calendar, then I think now is a good time to move into item 4.2, which is the initial review of arrest and citations data. And I want to just start by thanking UC Police Department and the County Sheriff's Office for providing us with this data for us to go through and analyze, and hand it over to Jonathan to sort of give a presentation of some of the findings.
Hey, I'm gonna give me a second to share my screen. Okay. Computer's running slow today. Okay, great. So this is the very preliminary analysis. I feel that, it's done in a way, but I don't feel it's gonna ever really be done. It's one of those things, but I think it's done enough to have a first look at it, and we're gonna need more looks at it in the future. And we have other strategies of how we can get this data analyzed, in better ways than just having me do it. But the way I did this report is, we got the 2013, 2018, 2019, and 2020 arrest and citation data from Ivy Foot Patrol, and UCPD. We got them into this. I hope my spreadsheet's opening, but we got the data that we got was race, sex, date of birth, age, employer, school affiliation, arrest location, involvement, charge, arrest date, and arrest time. So those were the pieces of data we were looking at for for every single arrest that happened those years. So what I did is I took every arrest and every arrest or citation and broke it down by each of the data points that we had. So there's no crosstabs in this. Crosstabs being, comparing race to type of citation. For example, I don't know how to do that, so we're gonna get there. But what we have is just each data point for each year broken down, and everything's within the year. So that's just a quick summary of what this document is. So and I didn't provide any actual, and when I say analysis, this is a presentation of the data. I did not make any conclusions or just provide any insight on any of this. It's just visualizing the data, because what we got was a list of 3,000 instances with the connected information. So I synthesized that for people to be able to easily understand it. But that's it at this point. That took about 8 to 10 hours, maybe even more to do. So hope to keep chipping away at this. There's a lot more to do. My next step, which was almost done but couldn't get done, was then doing a spreadsheet to compare side by side each year and each data point, and that'll be ready pretty soon. And I think that'll be even more useful, but I had to do this first to be able to do that one. But so you have, let's see, here's 2013, as you can see it. We've got race information. And again, this is the information as provided to us. We didn't change anything in terms of naming the categories or anything. This is as the deputies took it. It was recorded, and it came to us. So this is the original data. So this is the race information for 2013. And one thing to know, 2013 had 3,300 or almost 3,400 arrest citations. The other years had below 1,500. So the percentages are not showing that difference in the scale. Age, sex, age here we've got broken down by bands. Obviously, younger people are the majority of the population here reflected. This is the employer school information. I thought was great. One thing that's not shown here is unavailable, which is another huge percent, but it would just skew the whole thing if you just had that as a part of it. So of the ones that are available, this is of the information available, it's about half of them had it available. This is what the breakdown is for 2013. Month, we did a month analysis. I did by quarter later for other years. I did the time of day when the arrests or citations happened. Again, nothing not obvious here. Officer involvement, arrest, citation. I think where it really becomes interesting, I think the whole point maybe of this, or one of the main points of this, is looking at the charges and then being able to then cross-tab those charges with other info like race. But as a base level, the charges here are these are the top charges. There are so many charges that I think there was 170 different ones in 2013, but some of them only had one instance. So I didn't include them in this description. That's a further part of this project, but these are the top ones, the ones that had more than 10 instances in that year. So that's how we kind of broke this down: is the charge, the legal name of it, the description, what you might know it as, and then the number that happened. So this is a breakdown of it. As you can see, minor in possession, open container, makes up half or over half most of the years actually. But again, I didn't write any analysis, so I was not able to. There's a lot to create this. So that's essentially it. I can just keep repeating and scroll through this, but again, it's something that's attached to the agenda for the public to follow along if anyone would like to. So I'm not going to read through each point, unless there's anything anyone wants to ask me about or want me to explain more, and I can talk about next steps after that too.
Thank you, Jonathan. I would like you to go through, I think, the summary of charges and by different code section through 2018 and 2019 as well. But I want to ask a clarifying question first, which is on the summary of charges page for each year, there's a table that says has arrests, citations, and DFC, which is did not file charges. And I was wondering if you or maybe our law enforcement partners could explain exactly what the DFC is, what situations that would occur in.
Yeah, what Lieutenant Camarena told me was that that's when the district attorney didn't pursue charges against that person.
And so we don't know what the initial citation or reason for the stop or reason for an arrest. You can be arrested but not charged for some of these codes.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the data that we got. I don't know if, maybe when you get the DFC, the whole record is gone. I don't know how that happened. Maybe Lieutenant Camarena or Ross could explain that.
I'll jump in if nobody else will. I haven't stared at the data, so I don't know, but my inclination would be most of those are the 647F drunk in public charges. That carries a maximum jail sentence of 1 year. And so a lot of times, especially back in 2013, that arrest was made. And when it got to the district attorney's office, they declined to file charges at that time. And so, again, I don't have it in front of me, but I could assume from just working out there that many years that that's probably likely most of those.
So
Okay.
Shall I get to the other charges, 2018, 2019?
Sure. Let me also address one thing. I see a comment in the chat about curiosity about 2013 being selected. I think our board's intention was to add a comparison point. I know I wasn't here in 2013. Some folks on the call were, but I think it's a good point of comparison between how things were then and how they are now.
Maybe we'll try to get more if one of the next steps, like I said, George is helping in, is getting connected to academics and students who'd like to analyze data. And then they might tell us that picking 2013 was wrong. You should have picked 2012 or something else. We need more years. We can get more. So that's just our first take. Okay, so the charges for 2018, they are a little different, but also very similar to 2013. It's just more of the minor possession and open container as a percentage. But here, I'll just go through the top: minor in possession, second, open container, third, loud music noise ordinance, fourth, urinating in public, fifth, drunk in public. Next one, resisting, obstructing arrest, but Justin told me that's more about giving false information to the officer. IVCSD specific public nuisance. That's just the name, the closest name I could find in the county code, but it's basically the Deltopia Festival ordinance, but that's not what it's called, so I didn't name it that. Domestic abuse, two different kinds: fake ID by a minor, driving without a license, possession of opium pipe. Now that was something that didn't exist in 2013 that I noticed was now in the current period. Same with the using cannabis in public, which was not even a charge, I assume, in 2013. Same with the possession of over 28 grams. So there's pretty similar. There's more drug-related ones in 2018 than the 2013, from what I noticed. So that's 2018, and then 2019. So again, it was a pretty comparable amount of charges. It was like 1,397 in 2018 and 1,488 2019. And yeah, again, minor in possession, open container, loud music, urinating in public, drunk in public are the top 5 charges. And by top 5, it means almost like 60 to 70% of all of the charges are those 5. Festival ordinance, fake ID by a minor, again, the resisting, obstructing arrest, just giving false information. The IVRPD park ordinance, possession of alcohol. Again, opium pipe, even higher in 2019. Again, that does track with everything else we've known and have seen with the administration of Narcan at the same time. So yeah, those are the numbers. 2020, still not done.
All right, Jonathan, thank you for that presentation. I think this is a real good summary of the data as received, and I definitely find it very illuminating. I want to also offer to anyone from law enforcement, if there's anything that you would add to the data or to contextualize it that you think would be helpful for us to know.
I think this is Dave Millard. I think Ross is correct with the no charges filed. Most of those were going to be probably drunken publics. And then I think that's something that may be, and maybe Lieutenant Camarena or Justin can chime in, is maybe something that can be added is how many people went through the program that the Sheriff's Department has for the diversion from a ticket, of how many people go through that. Might be helpful.
We did get that information from Lieutenant Camarena, but it's just I haven't fit it in here yet.
Okay, yeah, just curious to see how many people get in touch with that program and using it. That might be helpful as well.
Yeah, I need to plug in the sobering center numbers that we also have into this to compare. You know, another thing Jay brought up to me was, you know, comparing this to the actual demographics of the community. So there's a lot left to do.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you for that, those comments. And I guess I'll open it up to the board for any discussion or comments, but I'll sort of start first with my preliminary thoughts, caveated with the fact that there are people much smarter and statistically savvy than I, that I think we're going to have look at this to actually do a deep dive and see if there are patterns that are there, that exist, that we're missing, and try and make sense of it. And so we really appreciate all the data being provided so that can happen in the future. But I guess I'll just say the main thing that I see when looking at these pie charts is just I've looked at it for so long, and I start to see Pac-Man in between the top 3 charges of minor in possession, open containers, and the 40-2 noise ordinance. And it just seems like that, you know, is right in line with what I've seen, that seems to be the way that law enforcement agencies are using predominantly, you know, their time when it comes to their citation enforcement abilities. And I really think, as has been said at this board before, it will be important for us to take a step back and think about what are our goals when it comes to enforcing some of those minor infractions, and how are they helping us achieve a safer and more healthy community. And so I guess that's my first impressions, that I opened it up for everyone else. I see Director Freeman, and then I'll go to Ethan.
So I'm actually sorry, I just realized I have an echo. Oh, it was unplugged this. So I have couple questions. One of which is, we occasionally the wording comes up about percentage of time spent doing various things. I'm actually curious to know whether, like, some of these charges something that takes a lot more time or effort or cost on behalf of the police than others, or are these something that, like, I'm not entirely certain how costs or time get allocated towards these sorts of things. And I'm also just at a higher level, what percentage of, for example, the police budget is spent on whatever whatever terminology we would use, whether I'm necessarily enforcement is quite the right word, but that leads to this. So, for example, I mean, if you were to make some kind of change, decide whether it be a policy decision on certain kinds of arrests, or you were to make a change to some aspect of the law, would that actually have much of an effect on budget or time spent by officers? I'm just like trying to get an understanding as we use various terminology, what it really means in context.
Sure, Jay, this is Justin. I can jump in on the first part. I'm not sure that I can answer your second higher level question without knowing more about our budget, and sounds like you guys are going to look into that. So I'll probably leave that. But the first part of the question, I'll just give you kind of a range. So the open containers, the minor in possession, the loud music, I would say in my experience working out there, those are going to take anywhere between 3 and 8 minutes on average. And so not a whole lot of time is spent there, where as you scroll down in charges, there's fewer of them, but your DUIs, that's going to be, by the time you do the entire DUI investigation, potentially breathalyzer, blood draw, spend time booking at the jail, report writing, potentially warrant writing. That's probably taking between 6 and 8 hours, depending on the officer. Then you go into some of the domestic violence charges. That can take 2 deputies or even 2 deputies and a supervisor a couple hours on scene, and then additional hours follow up with domestic violence counselors, other county organizations, and then sometimes days of follow-up work, and then court testimony. And so whereas there are a lot of the minor in possession and open containers, like I said, that's usually 3 to 8 minutes, and some of those other charges are taking 8, 12 hours, days at a time. So I could go through each charge and tell you exactly how long it takes me, if that's helpful. But I was just giving you kind of a range.
So another thing that I'm curious about is, are some of these charges, do they resulting from patrolling versus complaints? Is there like do you feel that loud noise music is more often from complaints or from patrolling, for example?
Yeah, generally your open containers and minor in possession, that's going to be almost exclusively self-initiated patrol type activity. Every so often we'll get a complaint from a resident that a certain individual is walking down a street with an open bottle of champagne or something, but generally that's just the deputies out walking around, spotting the open container and then issuing the citation. The 40-2 noise ordinance is, it depends on the time of the year, but generally about 50-50. 50% being people that will call in a noise violation, and then 50% is just the deputies walking around, noticing amplified music from over 100 feet away, and then issuing the citation then. So that's year by year, probably pretty close to 50-50.
If I could jump with a follow-up real quickly on that. So is there a difference between the 40-2, which is like the 12 p.m. noise ordinance, and then I'm assuming there's another code section for the disturbing the peace charges, if like someone wants to actually go through that citizen's arrest complaint form?
Yes, that's a different charge. That's a 415-2 of the penal code. And that is 100% complaint driven, because it's not a violation of a county ordinance. That's disturbing somebody's peace. So in general, we'll respond to the reporting party's house, have them sign the citizen's arrest form, and then go issue the citation from there. Generally, that more likely results in a warning than a citation, just because that can come in at any time of the day. That can be at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, a resident will call saying their peace is being disturbed. But to qualify for that section, it has to be willful and malicious loud noise. And so four guys playing beer pong on a Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. I don't think qualify willful and malicious. And so generally those end up being warnings.
I don't know if Justin's willing to kind of postulate on this, but I'm curious about, particularly from a law enforcement perspective, the interest in and maybe the purpose or goal of prosecuting open container laws is.
Yeah, that's probably a higher level discussion above my pay grade. I mean, I just from personal experience being out there back in 2009 and 10, when you had hundreds of people walking around with open containers, and we just simply weren't able to issue enough citations. There wasn't enough deputies out there. It just had a more lawless feel to it. You'll see in the data there was just more domestic violence, more sexual assaults, more cliff falls. And so the concept there is that if you let it get out of control and let people drink as much as they want out on the streets, you're more likely to see bigger crimes. Whereas if you start ticketing at the lower level, like open container, the theory then is that there'll be less burglaries, less vandalism, less domestic violence, less cliff falls. So that I believe is the concept, but I'm probably not an expert in that opinion there.
One thing from the list of charges that I know is another topic change that I end up kind of noting is I mean, so it's not necessarily a particularly large category, but it is up there, is urinating in public. And I think it's interesting that it's the kind of thing that, like, we had more bathrooms in the area. I mean, it's a very walking community, a very large area, to not have public bathrooms in very large amount of it. And so I feel like that's the kind of thing where it's like, when we look at things where it's like, well, this is illegal, and this is something that kind of people will have bad options for unless they plan incredibly well related to it. Maybe we can try to prevent things in other indirect ways. But I think those are the questions I'm coming up with right now. So thank you.
Hey, Jay, this is Dave Millard from UCPD. I think at one point, maybe Lieutenant Camarena can chime in too, that there was porta potties put out in Isla Vista for the purpose of having a place to use the restroom. But I think a majority of them ended up getting tipped over continually during the evening, and sometimes with people inside and whatnot. So it became rather messy.
Thank you for that, Dave, and thank you for those questions, Jay. I'm going to go over to Ethan.
Yes, thank you, Spencer. To start off, I want to thank our law enforcement partners for providing this information. It's very comprehensive. I doubt this has ever been done before for Isla Vista, so great job. My first question is on the concept of law enforcement discretion. We know that in the course of an officer or deputy's duty, they have a lot of discretion for how they engage in enforcement, how they use their time on patrol. And looking at some of the top offenses, such as minor in possession, open container, noise ordinance, I'm curious about how discretion is exercised. Is there a zero tolerance policy? Is there a looser policy of trying to work things out before a citation is issued or an arrest is made? How is discretion used, and is there any policy that tries to create consistency among law enforcement officers in the field in Isla Vista?
So for the possession we have and have for many years, the enforcement policy is zero tolerance, and we preach that in my outreach to fraternities and sororities and general public forums. I preach it's zero tolerance. There's no wiggle room that the deputy has for discretion. As far as the 40-2, that's the ordinance states that loud and amplified music can be heard from 100 feet from the property line. So that one, there is some deputy discretion there. If I'm standing 101 feet away from the property line, I'm much more likely, and I know the foot patrol deputies are much more likely to go and issue a warning and say, hey, your music is just a little too loud. would you please go ahead and turn that down? Whereas if I'm a block and a half away down Sabado Tarde and I can hear very loud music, they won't be given a warning. It's just so egregious that they'll go straight to the citation. So there certainly is deputy discretion in that one, but it's kind of on a case by case on how loud the actual music is.
Got it. That's helpful to understand. And I do think that discretion is a very important topic right now when we are talking about police reform, just because in so many instances, the actions of the individual deputy or officer can really produce different outcomes. And so I appreciate the initial answer you provide there. My next question is walking around in Isla Vista at night, we have a lot of observations of law enforcement officers going up to young people in the community, searching for open containers. This involves traffic stops of community members. This involves just stopping community members who are walking. This can look like deputies or officers aggressively walking up to people with flashlights and shining their flashlights in their faces and on their person. And I'm curious if those searches that are conducted or those contacts, which often result in no possession of alcohol, I wonder if those are recorded at all. And I'm curious because I know that when it happens to a person, both from observed experience and personal experience, it does leave an impact, an impression on that person. It can be significant at times. So I'm curious if we track that at all and compare the numbers of those contacts with the number of times that violations are actually discovered.
Yeah, that's a great question. The simple answer is no, we don't track that. And so I'll give you one that happened recently that I went to court on. And so I'm walking with a group of 2 other deputies, and you see the young guy with a water bottle, and I've been doing it long enough to see little tiny movements to show the guilt that there's not just water in there. And so, of course, I stop the person, check, smell it. It's very clearly vodka. He admits it's vodka, write the ticket, and we're done. We go to court. The judge always finds that because of the way that Isla Vista is, it's reasonable to suspect that somebody walking down with an open container could contain alcohol. So that gives us the reasonable suspicion to go ahead and make that stop. But 8 out of 10 times, maybe it's a newer deputy who just doesn't know. And so they're just checking every water bottle because it's reasonable to think there could be alcohol in there. And so those 8 contacts that are just water, it's have a good night. Thanks for staying hydrated and see you later. But it doesn't get recorded anywhere.
Thank you for that answer. I think it would be very helpful to record those because like I said before, it does have a big impact on the community and the person who experiences it. When someone who's armed comes up and stops you, oftentimes at night, sometimes from behind, sometimes it can be confusing. It can be very startling. So while I understand that from the other side, it may seem like, all right, you're doing fine, have a good night. Oftentimes it doesn't feel like that when you're the person being stopped. So I appreciate anything that can be looked into there. And I guess my final comment at the outset here is that we do see a significant change from 2013 to 2018. And I think that there's a lot of kudos to go around on that, in part to law enforcement, largely to the community. There's been a big culture change. People are working together to keep Isla Vista safe. So I definitely do recognize that real accomplishment of changing what safety looks like out here. So thank you for everyone who's put this information together. It's very helpful and a great starting point.
Thank you, Ethan. If I could just jump in, I'm sorry, just to clarify one last thing on my last statement. Although statistically those stops are not tracked anywhere, all the foot patrol deputies do wear body-worn cameras that are running. And so if there was an instance where somebody felt like they were unreasonably stopped, we can go back and pull up that footage. And so they are tracked in a way on tape. They're just not tracked numerically, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I'll just, if I could just say one more thing. Coming up, it depends on the size of your agency, but there is that you'll be able to look at some of this data. I don't know how it's going to be presented, but it's going to be in the Racial Identity Profiling Act of 2015. It depends on how big your agency is of when you have to start complying, but that's something that people will probably be looking at it sometime in the future.
Good to know.
Thank you for those comments. Are there other board members that have comments or questions? Okay. I guess I just have one other question, which is when it comes to, we were talking about the open containers charge. I think we've all probably seen sort of how that comes about. The scenario that Justin just described with someone carrying a water bottle with a law enforcement officer looking for a water bottle. But I'd love to know maybe if we could just get a description of how the minor in possession charges come into account. Are those associated with the open containers? Are those originating on private property? What are we seeing anecdotally there?
The difference there is that the minor in possession is just that they're under 21 years old. So they'll be issued a minor in possession 25662 BNP. Whereas if they're 21 years old, they're legally allowed to possess that alcohol, just not open in public, which would be the 36-3. So it's just an age difference there.
Right. So the minor in possession, it's being enforced in on public property, but it's not associated with private property.
Every once in a while, when we deal with the social host ordinance, which is usually called in as a complaint, where there is an adult providing alcohol to minors, then we would issue minor in possession on private property. But those instances are few and far between.
Okay. And sorry to be quizzing you on this, but you're so knowledgeable. Do you know what the social host ordinance code is? Is that accounted for in here, or is that not on here?
It's probably in there, but it's probably one of those charges that only 1 or 2 or 3 were written during the year. I find it personally rather hard to prove. It says that, they have to have provided alcohol to 3 minors, I believe. I don't know the exact wording on the section, but in my opinion, it's a tricky one to enter somebody's private property to investigate. And so we just, and speaking for the other foot patrol deputies, we just don't use it a whole lot. But it's probably on there written 1 to 4 times a year, something like that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation. Other board members have any comments? I see a hand from Ethan. I'll go over to you.
Thank you. Yes, another question I have is when looking at all the arrests, and especially the top charges, I'm sure there's some duplication where someone is arrested or cited for multiple charges at once in one encounter. And with that, I'm curious about when an officer or a deputy comes across someone on these low-level offenses. Let's say someone's urinating in public and they've had maybe too much to drink, they're a minor, they have alcohol on them, just as one example. But the point being, when someone is committing multiple low-level charges, does an officer or deputy oftentimes charge them for those multiple offenses, or just charge them for one offense?
Yeah, Ethan, great question. So that one's really on a case-by-case basis. There is some discretion allowed there. I'll just be perfectly honest with you. The way I do it is completely based on attitude. And so if this person is respectful and follows along, and they have 3 things I could charge them for, I just pick one and say, you've been a really nice guy tonight. I really appreciate your cooperation. I'm going to not add those other 2 charges. But if I'm getting constant attitude, the guy tried to run from me, he lied about his name, he's saying horrible things about my mother and my kids, I'm probably more likely to write all of the violations on the citation. So maybe that's a little too honest to say in the meeting, but that's how I handle it. It's all based on attitude.
Got it. Thanks for your answer there. And is there any standard operating procedure for that? Like when your partners are out in the field, is it a similar type of procedure?
Yeah, we don't have a specific policy that sets out exactly what to do in that situation, but I can tell you from working with multiple generations of foot patrollers that that's kind of the universal standard that we're using out there.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Ethan, this is Dave Millard from Ucpd. When we talk about discretion, there's discretion in a couple of areas with the officer or deputy in the field, and then of course when the citation or the charges go to the district attorney, there's discretion on the district attorney level as well. The filing deputy at the district attorney's office.
Totally. Thank you.
One other question that I had was on the Penal Code 647 at the drunken public. Are those are arrests, not citations, correct?
Yes, those would be physical arrests, unless I mean, there's all kinds of different circumstances, but probably the most times we would use a citation on that one is if we made the physical arrest and then it was determined the person was too intoxicated and had to go to the hospital. In those circumstances, we would usually issue a citation and then they're released to the care of the hospital. So that happens on occasion, but for the most part, that is a physical arrest.
Okay, great. And so I'm seeing, I guess, 25 of those. I'm just looking at 2019. And I guess I know we had spoken about this at our last hearing about the sobering center. And I don't know if you were able to ascertain if any of those 25 were able to be diverted to the sobering center.
Of those 25, no, none were. And yeah, I think we kind of talked about that at some length last time, that the deputy on scene felt that they weren't going to qualify for the sobering center, whether it be challenging to fight or an altered mental status or something along those lines. They didn't feel comfortable with dropping them off at the sobering center. So that's that. But as you can see, I'm sure from 2013 to last year and this year, the amount of physical 647 FRS have dropped a lot. We really kind of just use that as a last resort.
Got it. I see a hand from Director Thurlow.
Yeah, Lieutenant or Justin, can you share with us, and Ross, curb me if I'm off here in terms of the topic, but since we're talking about crime and crimes in Isla Vista and crimes in public, can you share any details with this assault that occurred over the weekend?
I was going to let the lieutenant handle if he's available. I'm not in front of my computer and I don't have intimate knowledge of it enough to really give you any info.
Can anybody from law enforcement give us any information? Oh, okay. Well then, let's continue with drunken public.
All right. Thanks for that, George. Are there any other comments? Oh, I'm seeing Ethan's hand now.
Yes, thank you. And George, I appreciate your last question. I would love to hear about that more later. I'm looking at the breakdown of sex for 2019, sex or gender, and I'm seeing that approximately a quarter of those who were arrested or cited were women. And understanding that law enforcement officers working in Isla Vista, at least from what we see, are mostly men. I'm curious about what steps are taken to ensure that women feel comfortable, especially say if they're stopped on a weekend night and they're alone. What steps are taken out in the field to make sure that they feel comfortable?
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. I feel like I'm jumping on all the questions here, but I'll get you an answer. Well, number one, I think I'll go back to the fact that all the foot patrol officers wear body cameras. And so I know that may not help the person feel comfortable at the time, but I would think being in that situation, if you saw a camera recording, you should feel like that person would not be able to do anything against the law or to harm you in any way, because it's caught right there on video. We also go through extensive training on that. And that's not just for Isla Vista, that's countywide. So there's all kinds of little things we do, like when we put them in a car, automatically the camera goes on. We record the mileage with dispatch to make sure that the deputy just drives from point A to point B, and they can go back on camera and go back on the mileage logs and check that they weren't driving them anywhere other than exactly where they're supposed to be. And then we try, if we can, to have a female deputy or officer present. As you mentioned, we don't have as many as male deputies, and so there can't always be one present. But certainly anytime a search is going to be performed or anything of that kind of nature, it will be done by a female deputy at all times.
Got it. That's really helpful to know. And I guess a follow up on the spirit of that question, right now with the reckoning of racial issues that we're going through as a nation and as a community, I imagine that there are many residents of color who for a long time have felt uncomfortable when in a police encounter, but maybe right now it's more pronounced than in the past. And I'm sure the body camera plays a role in that scenario too. But I'm curious about if you've had any discussions among deputies or officers working in Isla Vista about just being sensitive to that. Like I said, this has always been an issue, but right now it might be more so on the front of residents of color, Black and brown residents' minds when stopped by the police.
I had one follow-up question about the body cameras. I know agencies have different policies on when those are recording and how those work. And I'm ignorant to it. Can one of you explain how that works?
Justin's connection just dropped as you finished that question. I don't know if you noticed that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Dave Millard from Ucpd. I think you're right that most policies can differ from agency to agency. I think a general policy, maybe across all agencies in the U.S., would be, anytime you are having a contact with a member of the public, whether it be directional, informational, or whatnot, that you'll use your body camera. I can't say that for everyone, but I think that might be a general way to look at it for most agencies.
Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Dave. And that's confirmed what the policy for UCPD is?
UCPD is still working on the policy manual of getting it published. And then it's at a bigger level on the state level to get the entire UC system on a body camera policy. So if that's the case, it may very well be something like that. I don't know the exact verbiage of it at the moment, but I would make a guess that it's probably going to be for every contact that you make.
Great. Thanks for that explanation. I had one question, and I know Justin dropped off. We were asking him a lot of the questions, but I guess just in general, especially in light of the COVID-19 situation in Isla Vista, a question that I'm getting a lot that I do not feel I have the appropriate answer to be able to explain to people is during non-COVID times, I think the impression is that law enforcement officers will sometimes congregate outside a party, wait for violations of law to happen, such as someone who steps off the property while holding a can of beer, and then something like open containers will be enforced. And I think that I'm getting a lot of questions as to why that aggressive approach is employed in some instances, but then say now during COVID-19 that aggressive approach doesn't really seem to be being taken. And I guess I'm wondering if there's like a philosophy change or enforcement, I guess, nuance that I'm missing here.
I mean, I don't know how to answer that on behalf of the Foot Patrol. I don't know if Lieutenant Camarina's microphone to speak back is working. So I don't know how to really answer that on behalf of what's happening in Isla Vista. Historically, pre-COVID, in my time many years ago, sometimes walking by a party was kind of enough to get the music to turn down and maybe folks to not congregate on the sidewalk or the street at the party and move back into the party. I can't say that it was laying in wait, as you say, as you might reference to that, but I think sometimes just walking by or standing there for a moment will let folks know, hey, maybe we got to turn our music down, or maybe we got to gather our party goers up and so the law enforcement goes away. And then many times in my instances of working a Foot Patrol, that happened. Sometimes you're not really looking to cite anyone or arrest anyone. You're just looking for compliance with what is actually you're supposed to be complying with. So sometimes in that instance, just standing there for a second, letting them see you gains that compliance, and you move on.
Thank you for that, Lieutenant Millar. So I think seeing as Foot Patrol, I think, has dropped off the call, and I don't know if I have any other questions about this. I don't know if any other board members do, but I think this has been a good discussion, and I'm looking forward to, like was mentioned before, putting a pair of more experienced eyes on this when it comes to that statistical knowledge, to see if maybe there are things here that we as policymakers should know and aren't recognizing, or that law enforcement should know and aren't recognizing as well, or anyone else. So I'm excited to see how that turns out, and looking forward to that more robust report in the future. And I think that this is a really important conversation for the community to have, largely because the success or failure of our ability to maintain public safety in so many ways comes back to making sure that our way of enforcing public safety is done with community buy-in. And I think that that's really been something that I think in many ways it seems to have had many improvements in since 2013. But with that being said, I think I know there are still a lot of questions in my mind about some of the strategy and some of the goals of some of these practices. So with that being said, I don't know if any other directors have anything to add. But I think with that, we can, well, actually, you know what I haven't done? I haven't gone to public comment. I'll open up public comment on this item? If any members of the public would like to speak? All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board. And I will thank again Deputy Schroeder and Lieutenant Millard for answering some of our questions tonight. And we look forward to that continued discussion in the future. All right. We are going to move to item 4.3, which is contract with UCPD for Isla Vista safety stations. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So we have this contract for the safety stations up for this academic/fiscal year. It had expired in June. Ethan and I met with Dave on sometime last week, and we worked out some of the details, and we made a couple updates. We're still waiting for. Oh,
Can you kick me out?
oh yeah, my bad.
No. Just put me back in.
Yeah.
Whenever you're done. Thank you.
Will do. Okay, sorry about that. Where was I? Right. So there's two main new clauses in this contract that are. I can just read the two. They're short enough and they're important. CSD and UCPD will work to partner with UCSB and community organizations whenever possible to coordinate the delivery of other relevant services and resources in conjunction with the safety stations. These partnerships will involve groups attentive to racial equity and the fair treatment of all races with the intent of providing equal escort opportunities and outcomes to all. And then the other one is CSD and UCPD will work over the term of this agreement to investigate means by which to make the safety stations welcoming, inviting to community members of all races. So those are two new points. Wait, really quick. Sorry, we have someone new joining. Those are the two new points. What we're doing here, though, is there's no other changes. We also added a clause in towards the end about COVID-19 that Ross wrote up for us to use in all our new contracts. That's in the lucidity one as well. So we sent this over for UCPD and UC lawyer attorney review. And so they're in the middle of that. But the thought is if we can approve this and they have no changes, then we can sign right away and get the program started ASAP before Halloween. And if they do have some changes, we can still try to get it going before Halloween. We still have time. We have a board meeting on the 27th. So that's the idea, is we approve this since we've had this contract the same for 3 years in a row and we're only making small changes. And the racial equity change, for example, is like the same language we use in the other contract already approved by UC. We're hoping that this can get this through faster so we can get the CSOs back out there providing the service again. And I want to turn it over to Dave to see if he has anything he wants to mention about this.
Yeah, we've been working on the CSOs. We do have 12 that are committed to coming back right now. And what we're working on is working on the UC portion of it for the some COVID testing that is going to be mandatory for UC on the UC end. And I'm hoping that we can get some of that moved along by the end of the week and get the CSOs back as soon as we can. I'm happy that we have some that are committed to come back. To keep the program going and keep for IVCSD and for UCSB. And did you, on another question, did you said you've sent the MOU off already to be reviewed?
I think I just sent it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'll forward that through right away if you haven't already, and we'll keep this moving along.
Yeah, no, I haven't sent it to any other decision maker.
Okay.
I've shared it with you.
Okay. I appreciate you guys working with us and getting this program going again. It's a good program.
thank you for that, Lieutenant Mullard, and thank you, Ross, for your work in addition to Jonathan on that clause. I see, Ethan, you have your hand up. I'm going to go to you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to Ross, Jonathan, Dave, for all of your hard work on this. As always, I'm excited about this program because it's doing really what we've been talking a lot about recently, which is using community members who are trained in principles of safety to help promote public safety in our community on weekend nights. And I'm really excited for us to be able to start that back up. But also in this moment of COVID, I'm especially excited for us to have an additional safety presence out there. In our discussions, we spoke a lot about doing mask distribution from the safety stations, as well as having visible signage about just staying healthy during COVID-19. We also discussed really reinvigorating our efforts to have community partners out there with us as well. So when looking at our portfolio of COVID response efforts, I think that this will also be a very important aspect of that.
Thank you for those comments, Ethan. Are there any other comments from members of the board on the contract? All right. Having looked at myself, I don't know if I have anything to add that hasn't already been mentioned about it by Jonathan or by Ethan, but I'm very excited to see what these next months bring. And I think that these new additions, while small, are very important. And especially when it comes to doing that outreach, I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing that soon. And hoping that in the future, potentially we can figure out, see if there are creative ways that we can deploy the CSOs, whether it's for mass distribution, whether it's for maybe distributing other information or doing education regarding COVID-19. I think that this model is just so unique and so important, and we should build on what we have. I know it's something that we've spoken with Supervisor Hartman about, just more generally, how do we get more non-sworn positions, and we always map it back to CSOs. This really is the model that we have. So.
Can you close the door, Jack?
I don't know if there's any other board members that have comments on this. And so, Jonathan, are you for approval tonight? I think you're looking for us to bring it back at a later date.
No, we're looking for approval now, and then if there's changes, we'll bring it back. But
All
this,
right.
This should be what the final is.
All right. With that, then I would entertain a motion.
Sure, I'll move to approve a contract with UCPD for Isla Vista Safety Station, for the Isla Vista Safety Station program for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
I'll second that.
All right. There's a motion made by Bertrand and seconded by Hedges. And with that, I think it's a good time to open up public comment. Any public comments on that MOU? All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Any parting thoughts before we vote? All right, Jonathan, can you do a roll call?
Yep. Director Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Hedges?
Yes.
Geis?
Yes.
That's all we've got.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to our continued partnership with UCPD for our CSOs and safety stations.
Let me let George back.
All
in.
right. Let me know once George has returned, and
Okay,
we are going.
he's still joining. He's stuck.
Okay.
Okay, he's in.
All right. So now we're going to move to item 4.4, which is the Ivy Beautiful Partnership with the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan to present this.
Great. So this is still just a concept discussion, seeing where the board's at on this. It's a follow-up to our July action to partner with IVRPD to have more outreach in the community to the homeless community. And Kimberly is on, the general manager of the IV Rec and Park District. She's also on the call, and she will chime in too. We'll both talk about this. On my end, what I'll share about this is that me and Kimberly and Emily Allen have been meeting for a couple weeks now to talk about what this would look like. The need that's been identified is that the restrooms at Anascoya Park are not operable right now for the many different reasons. And so they need regular cleaning, and they need some sort of, attendance so that they're used properly. And so the idea is that incumbent is utilizing the Isla Vista Beautiful program to hire somebody who would be, I don't remember the exact title we've landed on yet, but they'd be essentially a bathroom attendant / peer outreach worker, where they would help with the keeping the bathroom open, the hours that are decided to have it be open. They'd be cleaning it regularly, and then they would also do some peer outreach to the users of the bathroom or the people nearby on keeping the area clean and keeping the community, under the concept of Isla Vista Beautiful. Like, everyone should be doing their part to keep these facilities in place clean. So that's the current thought. That's where it's at right now. We're still waiting to hear more from IVRPD's end on times and the structure of when it'll be open and how. But that's the idea right now, is that they would contract with us for our Isla Vista Beautiful program to basically provide an Isla Vista Beautiful person for that facility. And Kimberly, would you like to jump on and talk about the discussion your board had? Not sure. Let me try unmuting her.
Okay.
There you go.
There we are. Let me take it. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good evening, directors. Thank you so much for having us on the call. Thank you for the overview, Jonathan. So our goal really, we're really inspired by the IV Beautiful program. And to me, it's really important to not do duplicative work that's happening in any agencies, working together. And initially when I started in February, we had some concerns about the intended use of the restrooms, and then COVID hit. And so part of this goal is there's been a really great program in San Francisco that is called the Pit Stop program, in which it provides employment pathways for unhoused residents and others to do peer-to-peer outreach on restroom, sanitation, keeping things clean, looking at, ensuring that the restrooms are being used for the intended use. And with some of the restrictions that we've had with COVID to do extra cleaning and sanitizing, we thought this could be a really great opportunity to work closely with IVCSD and Ivy Beautiful to put something together collectively. And so that being said, we did have a discussion item in our last board meeting. The board was supported in seeing this as an operational use. Currently, we use contracted services to clean our restrooms and collect trash. And so I think tonight we just wanted to start the conversation at your board level to say that, we'd like to move forward in exploring options and implementing this program. And we would be putting together a pilot. I believe we're pretty close to putting a job description at hand that, again, would support Ivy Beautiful. And I will say that at this time, we're not looking for funding. Given that we already pay services, we're looking more for support and trying to do something collaborative. So with that being said, there are a lot of still details to work out, but I think the goal is to, again, identify an opportunity for, our agencies to work together and collectively with, which seems like again, from my understanding of Ivy Beautiful, is a really successful, great program. And really eager to hear the thoughts and feedback about that item. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Jonathan and Kimberly, and thank you for bringing this item forward. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness about how we can better engage our houseless population in taking more ownership of a space like that in order to keep it clean, keep it sanitized, and make sure that safe and healthy behavior is happening in a space like that. And Kimberly, I wondered if you could just sort of go over, I know there's, you guys were having some challenges with it, maybe for the rest of the board, sort of go through what some of that discussion's been like.
Sure. Yeah. And I just, again, want to acknowledge that this isn't just from people who may or may not have a home. We recognize that these are public restrooms and they've been open to the public of Isla Vista. But again, this was prior to my time here at the district, but our person who has been monitoring these restrooms for years, cleaning them, and some of the challenges really has to do with people, living in the restrooms, some of the drug and alcohol use, prostitution. We've had problems with just keeping the restrooms, the plumbing functioning. Sometimes people, all of us, I'm sure, have accidentally put too much toilet paper in the toilet. So again, I think our goal is to try to find, again, an opportunity to educate people about Ivy Beautiful, some of the opportunities for employment for, residents who may or may not be sheltered. And then, again, how do we open the restroom safely with all of the additional sanitation that is required of restrooms at this time, and do that in a thoughtful manner. I have to say that it's very rare that there's a park district or park property that doesn't have restroom that has some sort of hours. So again, our goal is trying to create a space that's safe for the restrooms to have, to be intended to be used the way that they should be used. And also an opportunity to educate people and ensure that the right behavior is happening in those restrooms, which is a very common theme in parks in general.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Are there questions from members of the board for Kimberly or Jonathan? I see Ethan and then Director Freeman.
Yes, thank you, Kimberly, so much for your work on this. I'm excited to learn more about the San Francisco Pit Stop program. I think it's great when we try to replicate successful programs from other communities. So I think this is really exciting, and I'm definitely happy to support it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Freeman.
So to verify I understood, you said you were not looking for funding for this. You were simply looking for collaborative partnership in the actual process. And so the park district would be paying the community service district to have Isla Vista Beautiful do this work, or?
That's a great question, Jay. No, that's a great question. I think the conversation that might be included, and maybe I don't know how the right answer for that at this moment. I think our goal is to try to provide an opportunity for the Ivy Beautiful program to have other opportunities for employment. And I do think that that's a question that needs to be worked out in our MOU and be clarified. So I don't want to speak out of turn on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Some sort of agreement we have. Again, we do need to figure out the exact details, like Kimberly said, but they'd be paying us / Ivy Beautiful to hire someone to do this. Whether the money flows through the district or flows directly to Ivy Beautiful, we haven't decided that yet. But since Ivy Beautiful is something we fund and prop up, we'd want to be involved in it.
Yeah, great question, Director. We'll take that into consideration.
Great. And with that, too, this is a little bit unrelated to the proposal at hand, but I know our board did allocate specific money for outreach in the parks, given the situation as unfolded over the last couple of months. And I know I would still like to see if that funding is not being utilized by this program, maybe something in the future where we are able to utilize that program, or maybe a discussion with some of our homeless outreach service providers where that funding can best be utilized, how we can best utilize it. Because I think that that is a really important thing. I know we allocate that money, I believe, in June or July, and so would love to see it get spent, I think, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's a really valid point, Spencer, and certainly that's something we can talk about, and I would like to get an update back to the board on that. I think that there's room for some type of a hybrid role in that, and I do think that whether it be, the person that's actually the attendant of the restroom and or, somebody who's able to also, connect with the community on the ground, but I do think that there's a role for, evolving this role into really supporting our unsheltered individuals for more of a longer term communication, and also just ensuring that they have, at the very least, the resources that certainly you all are providing and Home for Good's providing, as well as other opportunities in Isla Vista so that they can get the support they need. And also educating people who, again, there are many public members that use this restroom, educating other users of the park of, things that are happening within the community that they can also tap into. So I think that's a great point is, how do we put together some type of outreach material or pamphlet or something along those lines so we can use an opportunity to educate people on all things IV.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other comments from board members? Okay, well, in that case, I think we'll have a proposal being brought back to our board at a future date, and I'm really excited for when that happens. And we will stay in touch, and glad that everyone is working together on this.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for the support.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
All right. With that, we're going to move to item 4.5, which is the Isla Vista Compost Collective partnership with the IV Recreation and Park District.
Okay, well, two things with IVRPD today. That's fun. It's always fun to do the partnerships. So Sienna, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Great. Well, hi everybody. We're gonna get started with this presentation, IV Compost Collective partnership with Recreation and Park District, and I'm gonna let Sienna Hooper, who's our Compost Collective program lead, to give you most of the presentation.
Awesome. Would we like to share it, or?
Oh yeah,
Is it an agenda?
I'm gonna
Okay.
share. And Kimberly's
Jonathan.
on here too, so she'll chime in too if she wants, because she's been really big in helping figure this out.
Mhm.
She's actually figured much more of this out than we have, so that's present mode. Can everyone see that? The screen still?
Yes.
Great. Okay, go ahead, Sienna.
Awesome. So this is in regards to our to a proposal that will introduce the implementation and logistics of constructing a new Estero Park compost pile, as well as a new IVCC storage shed at Estero Park. And this would be included in IVRPD's phase 2 of their garden project and proposed at their board meeting next week on October 22nd. So a little introduction, the compost pile would be a vital resource for the Isla Vista Compost Collective and IVRPD staff members as well as community members to utilize this pile to dispose of their food waste and green waste. And the new pile would also allow IVCC's dirt riders to dispose of more compost from households and therefore allow the program to expand and sustain itself. And then the IVCC storage shed would be a new shed that would be specific for IVCC use only. Right now, IVRPD allows IVCC to store all of our supplies and bicycles in their laugh house at Estero Park. But part of their garden expansion project will include utilizing the laugh house for gardening workshops and other activities. So IVCC is looking for a new location to store all of our supplies, and IVRPD has generously offered to assist us with the construction of a new storage shed at Estero Park that would be solely for IVCC use. So the compost pile will allow the program to expand because as we serve more houses, we will need more space to dispose of the food waste. And one of the main goals of IVCC is to allow the food waste that is composted by households in IV to remain in the community in order to contribute building healthy soil to support IV's community gardens, which is what we're currently doing at Methodist Church and St. Michael's Church. However, we often drop off too much compost for their piles to handle, and it overwhelms their compost piles. So that's why about 20% of the food waste that we compost is actually disposed of in Marburg's yellow food waste bins, which they have donated to us. And this food waste is driven all the way to Santa Maria to be composted at their biodigester. So that contributes to a lot more carbon emissions. It has a higher environmental impact than composting our food waste at local community compost piles in IV. So with the implementation of the Estero Park compost pile, we would reduce the stress put on the IV Church's compost piles, and a larger percentage of IVCC's food waste would also be composted locally, therefore contributing to healthy soil and helping to grow food for the community. And this is also especially important as IVCC plans to expand and serve more people. This will allow us to have a central location to drop off more compost. And this would also increase the efficiency of the program because right now the dirt riders are dropping off the compost at a variety of churches that I mentioned in IV. So if we had a compost pile at Estero Park, this would reduce the time that the dirt riders would spend on each of their trips. And this would be just for the dirt riders who are dropping off at the Estero Park compost pile. But this would reduce the amount of time because it would be all in one central location and reduce the amount of physical effort. And also the compost pile will be located very near to the new storage shed. So that would allow a more efficient shift for the dirt riders as well. And lastly, it would also, the compost piles would provide public access to community composting. The location of the pile would allow easy access for the gardeners at Estero Park, in the community gardens, the IVRPD staff, any gardening workshop members, and the general public. And we also talked with IVRPD about having designated times that the compost pile would be open for the public to use and drop off their food waste. So you can go on to the next slide, Jonathan. So this is the location that we were thinking about, and it's in the cul-de-sac on Estero Road, right near the community gardens. This brick cement structure will no longer be used by IVRPD to store their trash and recycling and compost bins. And it provides the perfect contained structure for our piles that would be easily accessible to the public, whether that's via bike or car. And yeah, this would be a great drop-off location as well. And we also talked about some changes to the structure, such as breaking down removing the cement from the ground inside of the brick structure, as you can see on the photo to the right. And that's because when compost is generated, it creates a lot of liquid, and the liquid could run off and run off into the street if there's cement. So it would be better to have soil under the compost piles so that it could drain into the soil instead of contaminating the groundwater by running off into the street. And we're also talking about maybe breaking down one of the walls and extending the brick walls a little bit to provide more space for 3 compost bins. And those are all kind of just new ideas, and we haven't finalized any of those yet, but we also talked about maybe adding a shade covering to the top so that the compost wouldn't dry out, and then also maybe implementing a misting system that would be set on a timer so that we wouldn't have to water the compost pile by hand, and it would maintain like moistness and get water at timed intervals, which would be a really cool option. And the structure would avoid contamination from the public because it would be locked and keys would be given to certain staff members, IVRPD, and then we would have certain hours and designated times and days for the public to drop off their compost. So you can go to the next slide, Jonathan. So the compost piles will be a 2-bin or 3-bin lasagna style system, which is similar to the 3-bin compost piles at University United Methodist Church. And that's a photo of the piles at the Methodist Church. So the known cost for supplies for this pile is estimated to be around 100 to 300. And that's depending on the size of the compost piles and if we're able to receive any donated supplies from Methodist or other organizations. And then the unknown cost is in regards to the removing the cement ground inside the structure, extending the walls and door of the structure. And IVRPD's contractor will provide us with a cost and estimate for that if we do plan on doing that. And then you can go to the next slide. So in order to maintain these piles, we are planning on hiring a lead dirt rider who would be like an upgraded dirt rider who would also serve as the compost technician for IVCC. And we would ensure that the lead dirt rider is reliable, experienced in composting, and trained. And this lead dirt rider would work 8 hours per week. They would work as a dirt rider for 6 hours per week, which is what our dirt riders currently do. And then they would also oversee the compost pile at Estero Park for 2 hours per week. And in terms of our budget, since our new data analyst manager will only work 4 hours per week instead of 6, the extra 2 hours could be allocated to the lead dirt rider / compost technician. So that would allow us to stay within our current budget. And I just provided a list of the responsibilities of the compost tech. It would be maintaining the pile, gathering new materials, distributing the compost, and communicating with the rest of the team. And one of our ideas with the compost pile would be to distribute the compost that is generated to local gardens, the community gardens at Estero Park, and other communities that would need compost. So it would also be a great resource and opportunity for us to share the healthy soil that we've generated. And hiring a compost tech would ensure the longevity and sustainability of the Estero Park compost piles so that the piles are properly maintained far into the future. So now moving on to the storage shed. Since we would no longer be using the IVRPD's lath house, our storage shed would be essential to store all of our supplies that are necessary to operate the compost program. And after talking to IVRPD, we were thinking about placing this new shed right where these dashed lines are, that box. So it'd be right along the fence of one of the gardens at Estero Park, and it would be nearby the IVRPD's current lath house. And it would be facing Sueño Road. And then for the construction of the storage shed, after talking with IVRPD, we decided that it should be built from materials that will last rather than purchasing a shed that's pre-built from Home Depot, because we want to make sure that these supplies are sustainable and last for a long time into the future. And IVRPD's contractor is also going to provide a cost estimate for the construction of this shed. And based on the necessities that include a lock and a key, it being large enough to fit an electric bike and a cargo trailer, a regular bike and cargo trailer, at least 200 5-gallon Home Depot buckets, and space for all of our supplies as well. And then also enough space for our compost buckets to be relatively spread out so that they can dry properly, and also be nearby access to water so that dirt riders can wash the dirty buckets.
I'll do this one last section, connection to our law and why this is important for us. So under Government Code 61250, I'll be like Ross, we have the power to own, operate, manage, and construct community facilities. And so this compost pile and the shed will be a community facility that we center the program around. So the public, it's a facility open to the public during certain hours that they can come drop off their compost, and it produces the high quality soil for the community use like Sienna talked about. And yeah, so that's, as we're talking about LAFCO, MSR, and just different things about our district, it's just really important that we keep it within the government code. And this is a really strong, addition to our list of programs, and it fits in really nicely with what we are empowered to do by the law.
So for next steps, it would be to finalize the budget and gain approval from the IVCSD board, secure funding, and also gain approval from the IVRPD board, and then finalize a contract between IVCSD and IVRPD, gather supplies, and then construct the pile and shed. And thank you.
Thank you, Sienna. Great work.
Thank you, Sienna, for that wonderful presentation. It's so great to hear about all of the plans that you have in store to help grow this program and expand it in ways that will last far beyond you and the current staff. So very excited to hear that.
Thank you.
Also, Kimberly, if you have anything you wanted to add too.
Yeah, thank you. Sienna, what a great presentation. Thank you so much. I actually happen to be here with Luis. So Luis has put a lot of work into this as well. Luis Valero, our recreation coordinator. So just again, we are looking to create a space where we have better waste management in our parks in general. We see this as an opportunity to have both the Compost Collective work with our proposal that's going to have trash and other recycling in that area. We think that the cul-de-sac is a great spot. Potentially even doing future outreach for, to help curb some of the illegal dumping that happens in Isla Vista. Maybe we could have, special days where people they pick up trash and other items as well as compost. So again, we really see this as a great project. I think a couple things that come up for us, and again, this hasn't been approved yet wholeheartedly by our board. So this is still in process. We are meeting with our contractor on Thursday morning. We are going to talk about ensuring that we can actually dig into that cement and that there's nothing underneath there that would prevent us to ensuring we can expose dirt. We did meet with the Compost County Collective, Sam Dickinson, who did an overview, and he's in support of this project. And I definitely agree. Our questions too are just kind of understanding the cost, whether they're known or unknown. And we're also curious about just how much maintenance is going to go into turning the actual compost. So it's good to hear that right now you're thinking about 2 hours, but again, looking down the line, we're curious to know kind of more about that. So we appreciate the board's consideration in that topic. And I don't know, Luis, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Hi, this is Luis. And yeah, I think another thing just for the board to consider is just the long-term plan for the Isla Vista Compost Collective. I know currently it's grant funded, and as we all know, as we apply for grants, things change, and for this to be a successful, sustainable project for the long term, especially we're going to be putting all this effort into creating these bins. Just having the support of the board and the IVCSD to support the Compost Collective whether they run out of grant funding, and I don't know if you guys have some allocated funds to continue the program, if that were to be the case, but that's definitely one of the concerns that, that just comes up as we think long-term for this, because we definitely want this to be something that, that lasts for years and years, as someone said earlier, after Sienna, moves on. So, that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, and lastly, I'll say, Jonathan and Sienna, again, thank you again for all your hard work on this as well and meeting us where we're at. Is, the goal is to create compost that our gardeners can also use. So green waste, an opportunity to use some of the compost tea potentially down the line to put back into our parks and also into gardens, and to really, again, to, create the laugh house for what it's designed for, which is, hopefully post-COVID world, we can have workshops collectively in there and use that more as a community space to grow some of the things. So we really appreciate the flexibility around the locations. I know that Sienna's been very diligent in working with us to find a compromise. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you for that, Kimberly. I'm going to bring it to our board for any questions. And I see, George, you have your hand up, so I'll go to you.
Yeah, I think this is a great project. Sienna, I'd be really nervous because 2 people have already talked about you leaving. But this is a wonderful project. I have a comment and then a question. My comment is, I think it's really great that you have uncovered the fact that sometimes our environmental best efforts lead to unexpected results. And so the idea that we are shipping our garden waste or food waste to Santa Maria to recycle is really an example of where we don't really look at the unanticipated costs of doing good. So I think this is great that you have uncovered this, and I'm very, very supportive of this project. Now I want to put you on the spot. Since we have 3 gardeners on the line, can you tell me what is the soil in Isla Vista? I mean, what is that soil? And as we put this out, and certainly I think that there's grant money and there's also donor money out there for this project because it's so good. But what's our soil? Anybody?
I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Well, I think as you go forward and you promote this project, particularly with grant people and donors, my guess would be that we have some kind of really sandstony type soil, which really needs a ton of nutrients. So it would be interesting to know that, because this could be a real important thing in terms of regenerating the soil. Last but not least, I do backyard composting. I've never had the problem of it drying out kitchen scraps. So I would just be hesitant to pay for an elaborate watering system that could end up being more than the cost of everything else, just because, it's a watering system. But this is great work, and please stay until you see the end of this.
Thank you. I would love to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, George. Any other comments from members of the board? Director Bertrand?
Thank you. Just great job, Sienna. That was very, very thorough, and I'm really excited for the continued program. Very grateful for the partnership with IVRPD on this. This is great collaboration. So thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Luis. And Luis, I really appreciated your comments about the sustainability of this program. And it's good that we're talking about that now, well in advance of our next budget season. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you for that, Ethan. And I too want to echo that I really appreciate those comments about the sustainability of the program long term. And when you were mentioning, Sienna, taking the compost up north or that Marburg does that, it reminded me of something I think Sam or others had mentioned to us in the past, which is that they make a fair amount of money off of that, off of the product itself. And so I think moving forward, I would definitely love to see explored a way for the program to become self-sufficient and generate that revenue like that as we continue to just grow and build more capacity. And you said it yourself, essentially doubling the amount that we can do. So definitely would love to see that in the future. And just thanks to you and thanks to IVRPD for everyone's just collaborative spirit in making this happen. It's so important right now, especially that we can be that model in Isla Vista for a more sustainable type of living. And I'm very happy to support this project.
Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you so much, Spencer, and everybody. Just want to acknowledge your comments. Thank you.
And so with that, I think I'll entertain a motion if our board has one.
We're not agendized for action. It was just information.
Oh, okay.
We'll
come back with an agreement. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll bring an action back in the next couple of meetings.
All right, excellent. Is there any other public comment on this item? All right, excellent. Then with that, we'll be looking forward to that item coming back to our agenda. All right, I'm going to go to our next item. I'm going to skip over closed session and we'll come back to that at the very end. I want to just go to section 6 for reports now, first off, so that we can get those done while we still have folks on the call with us. So any members of the board have reports they'd like to share? Director Freeman?
At the Goleta Valley Library Advisory Commission meeting, we heard an explanation of the delay that in many cases, essentially, the world has gone into a global pandemic. And so with relation to the funding from the state and our ability to actually execute a lot of things, there was a lot of delay there. Actually, this is also, by the way, our first Library Advisory Commission meeting since the pandemic started. The day afterwards was a meeting of the Goleta City Council in order to finally accept the money from the state, and so that's something that actually only finally happened last week. And then, which by the way, I did not actually check that meeting, so I'm assuming that was just rubber stamped on the part of the agenda that we just rubber stamped. Now, whose name I've forgotten, but I should actually check that. And then our next month's Library Advisory Commission meeting has now been canceled. I have received official word of that. So.
All right, thanks for that update, Director Freeman. And I would add on that since the last time we met, Director Freeman and I and Jonathan met with Library Services Director Gray, as well as Assistant City Manager Christy Schmidt, to talk a little bit about libraries, and would add that the library director is going to be looking into purchasing a vehicle very soon with the goal of beginning to provide 20 hours a week service out of the community room or community center in the near future, and is going to be working with us to help figure out some locations for drop boxes and other library, little library and book dispensing machines. And so we're excited for that, and hoping to see that service come to fruition very soon. And with another component of that too is that we're going to need public input on what sort of library materials do you want at the library in Isla Vista. What is it that you need? And so I think we'll probably have some sort of a process where people can provide feedback for that sometime in the future. Okay, any other reports from members of the board? All right. And with that, we'll go to report from committees. Any committee reports? Okay, we'll go to a report from district council.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick update and more as a reminder, as we are in the campaign season, feverishly approaching November 3rd, and the district also has a couple of its board seats that will have some electoral action. Just a reminder that when individual members of the board are out in public, it's important to differentiate when you are acting on behalf of the board based on direction that was taken and provided during a board meeting versus acting in your individual capacity. It's right now, sometimes it can be a little confusing to people if any member of the board is speaking on their own behalf, or if they are speaking as the voice of the board pursuant to that direction that they were provided in a public meeting. Not that anything specific has come to my attention, but just as a general advisory to be mindful of how you represent any position that you may be taking. If people are soliciting you for any type of an endorsement or any type of involvement in a campaign issue, you can identify yourself as a member of the board of directors, or you can identify yourself as an employee, but it's extremely important that in doing so, that any member, any employee, or any member of the board, executive staff, to make clear that you are not acting in any official capacity on behalf of the board in taking any type of a position or making any endorsement or having any type of involvement. Obviously, you have your own First Amendment rights to take part in the political process, and that in no way am I suggesting that should be abridged. Simply be very specific in identifying yourself, that you're acting in your individual capacity, and you're only using any official title that you may have as employee director for the purposes of identification, and not to give the impression of any kind of endorsement. For anyone who wants to make donations to the district for any particular reason, simply refer you back to the donation policy that the board was very good about establishing early on in its creation of the district. The district itself, it welcomes all donations from community groups and businesses. If anyone wants to present a donation or a gift of some sort to an individual director, that director is entitled to take it on behalf of the district, simply follow the policy. Otherwise, it's important for individual directors to apprise themselves of any Fair Political Practices Commission regulations that may apply. As I'm the district's counsel, I can't advise any particular member of the board of what they should or should not do, except to refer to the FPPC rules and regulations. They have a hotline if you have any questions. And if you do accept any donation on behalf of the district, please make sure to indicate that you are doing so on behalf of the district and refer to the district's donation or gift policy. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ross. Next, we'll go to report from General Manager.
Great. Well, there's a lot I could report on. I'll keep it to the important ones, and a lot of my work has been on the agenda. A couple ones is the audit's almost done. We're going to expect it really soon, as fast as our auditors can get it done at this point, but they're overwhelmed with their workload. But the great thing is once that's done, we'll finally have a credit card, or we can finally apply for a credit card and other different lines of credit once we have 3 years of audited financials. So it seemed like it was going to be a far away, long time from now whenever we were going to get this, but we're finally here. That's exciting. Halloween 2020, we already discussed in the special meeting. The proposed name is Halloween at Home, and the official announcement and graphic by Lucidity will be out on Friday. to invite the public to join. We're working on a really strong collaboration with UCSB, who's putting on many different events on top of what Associated Students is doing. So we're working on a co-master calendar kind of thing, so everyone knows where to go or where to look to know what kind of events to join. And I mentioned the door hanger is going to be done imminently. One side will be all about the event. One side will be all about COVID safety. And yeah, this project's moving fast. It's a 3-week deal. So it's gonna take up time to collaborate with Lucidity and get everything done. Thanks to Jay, for example, for helping us get the internet figured out. So we're doing lots of little things like that to get it ready, but we're moving. It's good. Next thing is the Compost Collective. Just a separate update on that program is we are in the middle of the interviews for the data analyst to hire. And again, that could be a kind of role we look at expanding into an intern, kind of more hours in the future, especially with the kind of work we're doing. So that's what I'm thinking about there. But we're trying it out with the Compost Collective, and we're replacing a dirt rider who had to take a leave of absence. So it's the first time we had to use our leave of absence policy as a district, but it's great that we did all that work a couple of years ago to get them ready. Thinking of Natalie. So we had to use that, and now we're needing to replace one of our dirt riders. So that's happened. We responded to a really heavy meaning just high volume Public Records Act request in the week after the last meeting, and Ross has thankfully provided us a new policy and process to consider in having that. So that's we'll hopefully get that at the next board meeting agenda. And then Emily Allen actually did text me to update me on the meals at the Homeless Services Center, and UCSB is actually going to be donating meals from residential dining. So there will be meals provided, at least for the time being, at the Homeless Services Center. And that's not everything, but that's the report as of right now.
Great. Thank you for that report, Jonathan. All right. With that, I think we're going to convene to closed session. We have one item for closed session. It's conference with real property negotiators under Government Code Section 54956.8. And so with that, I think Jonathan's going to put everyone in the waiting room, and we will reconvene to open session and report out soon.
And Spencer, this is Ethan. I'd like to report that I'm going to recuse from this item as an employee of the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan.
(970-976) in Barcadero Del Mar. A motion was made by Thurlow and seconded by Hedges to terminate negotiations with respect to 976 in Barcadero Del Mar. The board took a vote, 5 members in favor, Hedges, Geis, Freeman, Thurlow, and Brandt. Director Bertrand did not take part in the discussion, so he's an abstention, and Director Nguyen was absent, so she did not take part either. The measure passed 5-0, 1 abstention, and 1 absence. That's a reportable action.
Thank you for that, Ross. And as a side note, Jonathan, can you share me on the minutes?
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. With that, we've come to the end of our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. I second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Any public comment or discussion? All right. Let's do roll call vote.
Brent?
Yes.
Freeman? Hedges?
If that was Freeman, yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
All right.
All
Good night.
right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the 27th.
Thank you, Spencer. Good meeting.
Thanks, George.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thanks.